does the past haunt you? Does it keep coming up? Is it like your past is on a loop sometimes, where it's like, why does my past keep coming up? Or maybe a past hurt or experience or a painful memory might come up from time to time. Could be from a breakup, a past experience where, you got betrayed or something happened which left a mark. Do you have any of that going on? Does that come up? And does it cause you to, I guess, lose your balance in the moment? You may have certain disciplines that you just let go of. You end up binge eating or something, or just being in your emotion. Well, if that's you, or if you've experienced that, then this is definitely the episode for you, where we're going to go into a bit of why the past sticks and how we can move on from it, so it no longer is hindering us. What is up? It's your host and meditation coach Manvir, back with another episode. And this time we're looking to how we can overcome past hurts, past pain, past experiences. A lot of the time when it comes to the past, and certain emotions that we don't want to feel that come up, we usually resort to some sort of escapism, whether that be you're binge eating, you're trying to focus on something positive, which in a sense is escapism. And on the other end, sometimes you may just be complaining about the situation. How could this person have done that, or how could this have happened, or I'm so unlucky, blah de blah. And I don't mean blah de blah in it wasn't an important thing that happened, but blah de blah in the sense that it's not helpful for you, it's not helping you move on. And so when we don't move on from the past, or when we're even unaware that it's coming up again and again, we fall into this trap where, because what happens with life is it will loop until you heal or learn the lesson you need to. So the past will keep coming up again and again and again. And not only will it come up again, it will come up stronger and stronger until it's just like bang, you can't avoid it. And here's the thing, I don't feel that, one needs to really suffer. We don't need to go to suffering to learn a lesson. And don't get me wrong, you may need to experience things sometimes, but with a lot of things, especially on my spiritual journey, hearing a lot of stories of the near-death experiences, what I took from a lot of those, because my journey, for example, has been quite mild and fortunately without any big crises, is that a person's been ignoring the message from the universe for a long enough time to where it, boom, has to slap you with something, so you just can't avoid it. And so the reason why the past sticks is because what happens in that moment, which creates a past hurt or experience, is that you're overwhelmed with the certain emotion that you're feeling at that moment. And that causes a contraction within you. And so, for example, this could be, like I mentioned, with trauma, for example, how it's illogical. And, you losing your mom in the shop for 5 seconds could literally be as traumatic as a actual thing that we recognize mentally as like, whoa, this is actually a trauma. And because emotions are illogical, anything can cause this the experience, it doesn't really matter what it is, but it can cause a trauma, or it can cause this contraction. And what happens with this contraction, your body couldn't handle the emotion at that time. And so in a sense, you kind of create a split. You can imagine, when your computer screen kind of freezes, whereas in fact the freezing that happens in a certain experience in your life, where the emotional overload is too much, you create a split in your subconscious mind. And this is like a safety mechanism, so you can actually handle being in the moment at that moment. And so a split is created within your subconscious, and that it's like that memory or that experience stays there and keeps running on like an infinite loop in the background, and part of your psyche fragments. And this again comes back to when we talk about the law of attraction and how your subconscious is actually manifesting, because most of your thoughts are subconscious. So this infinite loop of this part of you that has split from an experience where the emotional overload was too much, it will keep manifesting to heal, to learn the lesson, because essentially the universe, life, moves towards wholeness, moves towards balance. So as long as that part is still split, it will keep showing up to be reunited. And so this happened, I know, for example, with me, definitely with breakup. Like, in one sense, it's almost like the pain from a breakup, the reason why sometimes it takes so long to overcome is because it triggers a part of you that, for example, with me, with breakup, a part of me that, I would say was kind of dependent on, or scared, I would say scared of not receiving love. Because obviously as a kid, when you're not receiving love, when you're rejected, your parents are your lifeline. So it's really scary as a kid to go through that. And so part of why, I guess, in a sense, a breakup manifested for me, I could see that, this was one of these reasons. And this is why that it keeps coming up. Like you may have had the breakup ages ago, but you still feel the emotion around it, because there's a part of me that needed healing. And this also occurred with business. I was so reluctant to even spit out a price. I would do all these free sessions, get these testimonials, but I was scared to charge. And that again kind of relayed back of my fear, of, those times as a child, that I was a bad kid, for example. And the kind of fear of being a bad kid, because, kids usually go either way. Like, you want to be the good kid and you fear being the bad kid, or you just rebel. And both, in a sense, are trauma response. And so, I invite you to see, like, hey, what kind of things are affecting you today, which may have occurred from the past. Like, are there certain behaviors that you do? Or do you avoid certain things to avoid a certain emotion? Or just life just keeps slapping you, like bringing it in front of your face? And breakups are one of those things which can be, you could say, in a sense, traumatizing as an adult, like, because it's like one of those things. A relationship is one of those things that makes you feel some of the highest emotions and the highest love, but on the reverse, it kind of throws you in some of the lowest lows. And so what do we do when we come across these past experiences or hurts that come up and, it's affecting our life, affecting how we act? What do we do so we can overcome this? And so the essential way is feel to heal. And, I provide a specific meditation, a beginner meditation, to feel your emotion in a certain way, because a mistake we make, especially when it comes to being authentic and expressing our emotion, is that we dive into the emotion and express it. We become entangled with the emotion. And so what that is the equivalent of is, like, suppose you have a certain threshold of emotion you can experience before it becomes too much and you let off the steam. So when we express emotions, usually we're just letting off the steam, we're not producing a deeper healing. And so instead of being in the emotion and letting it unravel, you need to be with the emotion and let it unravel. So you see the space that you create, because when you're in your emotion, you kind of assume it as your identity. instead of being with the emotion, creating a space for the emotion to unravel and become unstuck. Because like I mentioned before, it's emotion in the previous episode, that it's emotion that keeps programs, subconscious programs that are unhealthy, to be stuck into place. And in this scenario or this example, it's emotions that keep these past experiences stuck into place. And it's really the emotion that needs to be released. Like, you don't need to forget the experience. You'll always have a remember. Like, it's good to, in a sense, remember the experience, so you can set a boundary so something doesn't happen the next time. But instead of having this experience drag you down every time you remember it, you can discharge the emotion, so now it becomes neutral. Because remember, everything is neutral until you put a meaning on it. And the meaning we put on it is usually conditioned from our beliefs or our past experiences. So that free meditation is there for you to begin you on that journey. But when it comes to a particular event with someone, a particular person, there is a method that I love that Teal Swan shares. And it's where you kind of express the emotion in layers. And so you may be familiar with the levels of consciousness map and how there's like a ranking of certain emotions. And so you can go from a low emotion, expressing it, and slowly build your way up to something like love and unity. And this is a great way, especially because one thing I always remind myself of and others is that anger is always the secondary emotion. Like, when you finish expressing anger, it's always, there's something beneath it, which is usually hurt. So I'm going to go through a quick example. I'll leave the link in the description, but I'll go through a quick example of how you can go through this. And so you could say this, the layers of emotion is, you start off with anger, express anger completely. Then you move to hurt or disappointment, express that completely. Then from there you can unlock the fear or insecurity. And once you express that completely, it brings you into a space of understanding. And from there you can access empathy and see the role you may have played in a certain experience. And from there you can go to love and unity. And so I've got this noted on my phone, so I can express this. And we'll use an example, a random example. Let's pretend you were meant to go on a date with your partner and they didn't turn up. And so you're just like, that just stuck with you, and you're really mad about this. And so you'll start by expressing the anger, the blame, the resentment, the repelling emotion. So for example, and ideally you do this on your own or with a partner with their consent, but you let your partner do it also. And Teal Swan kind of goes a bit more into that into the video. But first you start off with the first layer, which is anger. You express that like, I'm so pissed off that you just left me there alone and let me just look like an idiot just being there. Like, I'm so angry that you just didn't turn up. Like, how many times are you going to do this? Like, I've had enough. And so you express that. And you move to the next, which is disappointment, sadness, hurt. And so here you'd be like, I'm so hurt that you just left me alone. Like, with all these people just looking at me sitting alone on a table at a restaurant. That really hurt me, that you couldn't just give me the heads up. That you just kind of abandoned me like that. Like, I'm disappointed in you that you would do this again. Like, you've got a track record with this now. And so that got a bit real. So you express that. Fortunately I haven't been through that experience. But so once the disappointment's expressed, you can move to the fear and the insecurity. And this is also where the deep wound comes up. And so you can even, take note of the deep wound to work on later. And so, for example, I felt so abandoned and alone when you didn't turn up. And I was scared that, maybe, I was scared that maybe you don't love me the same anymore, that you may be thinking, or you may be seeing someone else. And when I say I felt abandoned, it reminded me of when I was younger, and my parents would just leave me alone for hours. I would always try to like get their attention, and they would just be too busy with the TV, and it made me feel unloved, made me feel abandoned. And so now that you've kind of gone into the deep wound and the fear, you can come to now understanding and empathy, and also responsibility. So for example, I understand that you're very busy, and you even told me that you maybe not 100% were able to make this. I understand how I keep nagging you for these days and keep making you do it again, like do it so often, even though you've expressed many times that for this period, for these couple of months, you're going to be busy. And I guess I'm responsible. Like, I couldn't, instead of sitting there for ages, I could have just messaged you even before I went to the restaurant to see if you were still up for it. So I guess there's a bit of, I could have done something. And so now that you've expressed that, you can move on to love, wishes, solutions, and connecting. And so this is what that might look like. I do actually love you, and I do value our relationship. And I wish we just communicate better so we don't have to come across these situations again. And I guess next time, you could maybe put it in your calendar. So on your side, like if you know that you can't make it, then it pops up on your phone and you can send me a message. And obviously on my end, I can do my bit and even message you a day before to still see if you're able to make it. And so you come to a solution. And that's it, from layer 1 to layer 5. And if you do this with another, what Teal Swan recommends is that you go through the 1st to the 5th layer, and then you let the other person go through the 1st to the 5th, and making sure that you do it if you're going to commit to it, because once you get to the love, you don't feel like going back to anger, blame the other person. The other person's going to be like, oh, I get you, but you need to make sure you both do it if you do that. And so that's that method. That was a mouthful. But that's a nice way to discharge a certain experience. And like I mentioned, when you get that deeper wound, you can dig deeper into why that's there and do the healing behind that deeper wound. Otherwise, it may just manifest again. Like that whole experience could have just been a manifestation of that deep wound. And that brings me on to the 3rd way of overcoming what you should do or what you could do. It's up to you at the end of the day. And with me, this is what I used to do first. And then once I realized that this wasn't the complete solution, I moved on to the feeling of emotion. But then I went too much on that side of feeling the emotion to where I'm like, I'd feel the emotion to, for example, a breakup. But I know that the healing hasn't completed. And that brings me on to the 3rd thing, is to look at why or what lesson is there to learn and why it may have occurred in the first place. And like I mentioned, you can start off with this because a lot of the times it can make the whole feeling and the releasing easier when you start off with this aspect. And you could dig deep as to what's the lesson with the for example, with a breakup, like I went through that process I just described before, but there was still a deeper lesson I needed to learn about where this pain came from, and that was like the deeper wound from as a child. And the lesson could be anything. And so maybe actually I would recommend starting off, if you can, sometimes you need to release the emotion first and heal the emotion, but looking at what lesson that experience was meant to teach you in the first place. And that's when you really truly integrate the experience and bring it to a place of completion. Once you've felt the emotion, released it, done the digging, and found the lesson. And that's when you can truly move on and that experience won't come up again. And so that was it for this episode. I trust this provided value for you. If you know anyone else who's going through past that needs help moving on from it, please do share this with them. And so just to recap, we went through, why past experiences, memories, feelings stick in the first place. And that's due to the fact that a contraction occurs, a splitting in your psyche occurs because that emotion was too much to experience at that moment. And so as a safety mechanism, your subconscious splits so you can actually handle that emotion in the first place. But the thing is, it stays in your subconscious, and because your subconscious is what manifests your reality, it keeps coming up. And it keeps coming up because it needs to be healed. And so we went through some of the ways you can go through this, how to heal this, and that was essentially feel to heal. Provided the free meditation, and we talked about being with the emotion rather in the emotion. And when you're with the emotion and you don't identify as the emotion, you create a space for the emotion to unravel, untangle, and release. And like I mentioned in the previous podcast, emotion is like the glue that keeps stuck the program, or in this case, the past experience, in place. And so we also talked about a method that I got from Tia Swan, which is expressing the layers of emotion, and this works especially well for when the past experience you're talking about is with someone, especially someone that you care about or that you know that you're going to see time and time again. And then the third way, which I mentioned is good to also have as the first way, is to look at what the lesson was. What was the lesson that was meant to be learned from that experience? Why may have it come up in the first place? And sometimes when you start off from there, it makes it easier to release and feel the emotion and come to a place of empathy, compassion, and understanding. And so that was it for this episode. If you would love help for going through this, if you see the past is preventing you in your life, in your business, like myself, being scared to charge a price, or there may be fears and anxieties coming up, and that they stem from deeper down, and it's an internal problem that's occurring in your business or your life that is keeping you stuck. If that's the case, then I invite you to jump on a free clarity call, a free consult with me, where we take a deep dive as to what's going on, why it's there, and what solutions can we find to take you to where you need to be. And on that note, I'm leaving it there, wishing you a beautiful day. It's your host and meditation coach, Manvir, signing out.